Welcome back, everybody. If you're new, my name's Nicholas, and this is Investing Against the Grain. Is Elon wrong? Was Elon wrong? Take a look at this clip.
LiDAR's lame. LiDAR is lame. They're all going to dump LiDAR. That's my prediction. Mark my words. And in cars, it's friggin' stupid. It's expensive and unnecessary, and as Andre was saying, once you solve vision, it's worthless.
So that clip was from 2019 when Tesla held their Autonomous Day. And as you can see in the video, Elon Musk proclaims that eventually everybody will ditch LiDAR and anyone who uses LiDAR is doomed to fail. However, I think Elon may be wrong about this. Now, before you sound off below in the comments about why I'm wrong about everything, watch the video, and maybe by the end of the video, you'll see my point of view and where I'm coming from, which it is a little bit of a different angle. But maybe by the end of the video, you'll decide to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and ring that bell. Just maybe. All right, with that said, let's get into it. Before we go into this, we need to make sure that we understand what LiDAR is. Okay, we see LiDAR being talked about everywhere, but it seems like a lot of people don't actually know what it means. It seems like it's a headline or just some rhetoric people hear. Like I mentioned to you, I had a friend who believes that Tesla is the only one not doing LiDAR, so maybe Tesla's doing it the wrong way. Well, let's unpack what LiDAR is. So LiDAR stands for light detection ranging. And so what's happening is that with the LiDAR system, as they're spinning around, which I'm sure you've seen, it's sending out all of these different beams of laser or light. Okay, and the way it determines where an object is, how far an object is, and the rough shape of an object is by that laser going out, striking the object, and then sending it back. And that time that it takes to go and come back allows it to determine what the distance is of the object. And so with LiDAR, you're doing this to a lot of different points. And all those different points allow you to generate back a general shape of what an object is and what the distance is relative to where you are. Okay, so that's what LiDAR is. And so that's what everybody's using, right? And the idea is I need to be able to know if there's an object in front of me, to the side of me, behind me, coming down to the street out of nowhere. So that's why a lot of these companies use LiDAR. Now, they also use radar. And what radar is essentially something very similar to LiDAR. The difference is instead of using light, radar uses radio waves. And so what's the real difference here? Well, the difference is with radio waves, as you could imagine, just as you are in your car or in your house, right? Nothing obstructs those waves from coming into your house, right? They are essentially occlusion penetrating. In more simplistic words, it means that nothing's going to obstruct those radio waves from coming through. So radar can go and come back. The problem is that radar is not as good at detecting all these small points to determine what an object looks like and what the shape may be. And so that's where LiDAR really surpasses when it comes to radar. So why do we use radar? Well, we use radar because of this ability to penetrate through things, right? Whether it's buildings or more notably things like rain, fog, bad weather. And this is where LiDAR really struggles, okay? Because LiDAR is based on light waves essentially, right? So it's shooting out those lasers. And so any kind of rain, any kind of fog will obstruct the waves themselves. And so that's why when you see companies like Cruise and Waymo and even Ford's Blue Clues, whatever they use, they all have to have a combination of these radars and LiDARs, right? They can't do without both. And again, this is how the vehicle, the so-claimed autonomous vehicle, is going to be able to see the world around it. Now, that's not enough. On top of that, what these LiDAR systems need to do is leverage GPS and high definition mapping. So what they're trying to do is really recreate the world around it and leverage that to create kind of a train track for where the car can and can't drive, right? And that's the approach that all these companies are using. Okay, so that makes sense. And we talked somewhat about the issues with LiDAR and how radar makes up for that, and the issues with radar, and that's where LiDAR makes up for that. So it seems like it's a great homogeneous story, right? We bring these two things together and boom, we have a solution. Great. This is where we kind of come into what Tesla's doing. So Tesla has taken a fundamentally different approach. And the first approach is thinking strictly about vision. So with LiDAR, the whole intent is to send out these beams of light to get signals back, to get an idea of what the object is. The problem with that is that if you compare that to a camera like we have right here, I do not get as much rich information from the LiDAR versus what I get with the camera. Right, with the camera, you can tell if I'm moving my hands. You can tell if I'm giving you a dirty look. You can tell if I'm happy, right? But with LiDAR, you'll never be able to get this. Well, why does that really matter in terms of autonomous vehicles? Well, with autonomous vehicles, our entire roads, our entire system is made for our visual, our eyes, right? Our visual cameras that we have. So whether it's reading signs from a construction zone, whether it's determining if that person on the bike is looking over their shoulder because they're going to cross the lane, whether you see a mother and their daughter and they're walking, and are they on their phones? Are they distracted before they cross the walk or cross the crosswalk, even though they don't have the right of way, right? All these things matter. And the only way you're going to get that is with a camera, right? With actual video footage. And so this is the reason why Tesla has decided to lean towards the vision methodology versus LiDAR. And really, the only people doing this, it's Tesla, Mobileye's kind of doing it, and then Comma.ai. So they're the only ones that are really doing it. And Tesla's the only one that's really doing it at scale by any means. Okay, so that's what Tesla's doing. But why use cameras and radar versus LiDAR and radar? Well, fundamentally, you have to understand the problem isn't hardware. And I think this is what everybody loses the argument on this. Everybody thinks you have to have LiDAR. Other people think, oh, no, camera-based is the only way. The truth is, none of these really matter. What really matter is the software underlying everything. And so when it comes to that, this is where the camera really starts to succeed, is because with the neural nets, we can actually take all of these camera inputs, we can stitch them together for essentially a surround video, and then the software can make a determination on what to do based off that. Whereas if you look at something like LiDAR, it's leveraging LiDAR, it's leveraging radar, it's leveraging GPS and predefined mapping in order to decide where it can and cannot go. So where's the real difference in this? Well, besides the examples I gave with a biker looking, a mother and her daughter crossing the street, another example is what we're really doing. So with this Waymo Cruise approach, what they're doing is they're trying to figure out where are the lane lines and how do I stay in those lane lines so I can drive around in this, essentially virtual train track methodology. What Tesla's doing is saying, I don't care if there's no lane lines. I don't care if a car's coming against me, against traffic, even though they're not supposed to. The goal of the vehicle is, one, to never crash into anything, and two, to know how to drive despite if there's lines, despite if I don't know where I'm at, is the vehicle needs to be able to learn to know how to drive. So those are two fundamentally different ways of approaching this. Now, you may be saying, okay, well, Tesla's also using radar. Well, they're not actually. So in the same camp of all the people who were always saying you have to have LiDAR, you'll never be able to do this without LiDAR, well, they also said the same thing about radar. They said radar was a must. Radar was so important that even Tesla was using radar with their vision-only system. However, once again, the team of Andrej Karpathy, Elon Musk, right, and everyone underneath them, right, can't forget about the whole team, right? It's not just Andrej, it's not just Elon, right? There's a vast amount of engineers underneath them doing amazing work, but they all were able to come up with a way to get rid of radar. Okay, well, how do they do that, you might ask? Well, let me ask you, hypothetically, let's say that I were to show you what 3 inches look like and what 6 inches look like and what 10 inches look like. And I know there's probably going to be a lot of comments about this example, but 3 inches, 6 inches, 10 inches. Let's say that I showed you what different examples, right? Whether it's a toy, a cup, a piece of paper, a certain distance, but I showed you 100 times what 3 inches looks like. 100 times, and you had to look at every single time. And I showed you 100 times where you actually had to study this, what 6 inches and then what 10 inches look like. How accurate do you think you could eventually get at saying, oh, that's 3 inches, oh, that's 6 inches, oh, that's 10 inches? Maybe that's not the best example. Here's another example. I told you, I grew up working on cars, okay? When you work on cars, when you work in engine rooms, when you work on machinery, you tend to use a lot of wrenches. And you get to a point where you can quickly look at something and be like, oh yeah, it's a 24 millimeter wrench. Oh, that's a 19 millimeter wrench. Oh, that's a 3/4. Oh, nope, that's a 5/16. You can see it and you know the size right away. Okay, and that's us training our neural nets, our brains. And so that's exactly what Tesla did. Tesla leveraged the radar because the radar was very good at determining distances, right? And so what it would do is it would say, hey, the distance from me to there is 2 meters. From here to there, that's 2.5 meters. And the radar would keep giving this input, and the neural nets would see that, and it would learn. It would learn what 2 meters is. It would learn what 2.5 meters is. And it got to the point where the neural nets were actually being more reliable and had the correct information faster than radar. So what happened? Well, they got rid of radar. And so now the thing that even Tesla had to use, even though they're all vision, they got rid of. So this goes back to the idea of why we don't need LiDAR. Again, keep in mind, if cameras do a better job, and if we can train the cameras to see the world, then why would we need to have LiDAR, something that isn't as good at determining what the object is? Sure, it can tell me that's a human, but it can tell me if it's a woman, if it's a man, if it's a child, if it's a teenager, if that individual is paying attention, or are they looking at their phone, or are they about to cross the street, right? Is that biker looking over his shoulder, right? Can it do all these things? Can it determine, oh, this is a construction site and it says do not enter, reroute? Can it read the signs like that? No, it can't. So this is where vision really starts to excel. Okay, so where's the big problem? Why don't other people do vision? Well, here's the big crux of it. And this is how we get to where I think Elon Musk is wrong. The big crux is that in order to get to the point where we can use cameras in video and train the neural nets, just as we did with radar, the problem is we need data. We need lots and lots of data. And when I say lots, I mean, think of what a big number is and multiply that by probably 1 billion, okay? Like we're talking about lots and lots of data, extreme amounts of data. And all these companies can't really get that amount of data. Well, why can Tesla? Well, pretty straightforward, and most of you probably know this. Tesla has a ever-growing fleet of vehicles out in the world. And what Tesla's chosen to do is go ahead and front load and take on the expenses against their margins for all the camera, all the computers needed for full self-driving, so that when it's ready, they can just flip a button, push out software, boom, we're done. Everybody has it. In turn, what this means is that at this rate, this year we'll add another 1.5 million vehicles to the road, which is yet another 1.5 million vehicles sending data back to Tesla so that they can train on. Now, what do we do when we get all this footage back, right? Okay, this year will be 1.5 million vehicles added to the already existing 2.5 million vehicles out there. So the number is growing. It's growing exponential with the amount of data they're getting back. Well, now they can get all this data back, and what they can do, and what Tesla did for many years, a lot of people complain about, oh, Elon said next year, Elon said in 2 years, Elon said in 2 years, right? And they give him a lot of crap for this, but you have to understand what they were doing. They were solving arguably one of the hardest problems we've ever had to solve within the world of computer science, and that is having computers understand vision. In other words, what I'm saying is, showing a picture of a cat and showing a picture of a dog, and can a computer understand that this is a cat and that's a dog? You may think that sounds simple, but here's the thing. There's many different ways cats can look, many different colors, many different sizes. Some are hairless, some aren't, some are big, some are small, right? One might be missing a leg, as sad as that is, but that's still a cat. And for us as humans, it's so easy for us to see that and tell, yeah, that's a cat. But it's not for computers. And so in order to train computers, just as we did with the radar, we need to give it lots and lots of data of what certain things are. And so that's where all this data comes into play. And so is this working? All right. Is all of this working? Is it working the way the radar worked and we were able to get rid of radar? Well, I'll put it to you this way. Tesla right now has over 60,000 beta testers all over the United States. When I say 60,000 beta testers using full self-driving, what I'm saying is they are in every city, in every state, driving without any geo barriers or anything. So the difference here between what everyone else is doing, such as a Cruise and a Waymo, is that they have maybe 700 vehicles versus Tesla's 60,000. They have maybe 700 at most. I believe Waymo has the most at 700. And they are stuck within a little geofence. Waymo, famously known for Chandler, Arizona, where they had a little area they could drive in, and that was it. And essentially they're using GPS and LiDAR and radar, and they're creating this virtual, railroad track they can only stay in, but it couldn't go out beyond this little geofence area. And now they're doing the same thing in San Francisco. And so this becomes the limiting factor, is that that's not scalable for many reasons. First of all, the idea of going to every single city and getting such a high definition mappings of everything is not pragmatic. And the bigger issue is with high definition mapping, it's a very brittle idea and sample. So why is it so brittle? Well, it's brittle because if anything were to change in the surrounding areas, well, now that mapping is not correct, right? It's changed. And that can't be something that throws off a autonomous vehicle. I mean, in reality, is it an autonomous vehicle at that point? No, it's not. While these things are geofence and they have this big single point of failure where if something changes in the environment, well, then the maps are rendered useless. And then the LiDAR doesn't have a good ability to determine if something is a trash bag or a tire. It can just detect general shape. Right? That's a big issue. Meanwhile, Tesla's out here with vehicles driving all over the country, soon to expand to Canada. Right? So that's the big difference here. And so here is where I think Elon Musk is wrong. And I know I took a little bit to get here, but I had to explain everything. I think he's wrong. These companies will never ditch LiDAR, and these companies will never, ever be able to get past where they currently are. They're going to reach a local maxima. So where Elon's saying that they'll eventually ditch LiDAR or they'll be doomed, my prophecy is that they will be doomed. I think they'll eventually just lease out what Tesla is building. Why? Well, the why is because they do not have a fleet. They do not have a fleet where they can get enough data to send back to learn all of these edge cases, to start learning how to solve this vision problem, this problem that has perplexed many computer engineers for so long. But Tesla's doing it. And until they start doing that, they'll never catch up. Okay, so you might say, all right, well, they can just start putting cameras in their vehicles and putting them out there. I disagree. Here's why. Waymo, well, they're not even a car company, okay? They're just a division of Google that is trying to solve this problem. So sure, they could maybe team up with someone, with a certain company, start putting cameras in these vehicles. But here's another problem. Tesla is doing all of this, all the supercomputers and everything in there, whether people use it or not, and they're still getting 30% gross margins. Okay, well, Ford, GM, Volkswagen, they're 10% or less in gross margins. Think about that. Tesla is essentially triple, and they're at 10 or less percent. And Tesla's doing this with all this extra hardware in there. These companies have such low margin without any of this extra hardware in there. So what's going to happen? No one's going to decide to do this. It won't happen. So what I foresee happening is none of them ditching LiDAR, none of them, saying, okay, we are just going to keep going down this until we figure it out. I think they all say, you know what? We're going to ditch this. Elon, we're going to hold you to your word. You said that we could license it from you. We're going to do that. We're going to shut down this division of the company where we're spending billions of dollars to try to learn how to create an ADAS system. Instead, we're just going to license what you have. Okay, we're going to turn it into a commodity. So that is why I think Elon is wrong. And I thought this would be a very pertinent video to make today because everybody's talking about LiDAR all of a sudden. Okay, it seems like this conversation has started up again. It seemed like the conversation died out whenever Tesla was able to get rid of radar and prove that with neural nets, we could train the neural nets how to do what radar does, and it's even better. All right. And so with LiDAR, it's proof that we don't need LiDAR because there are so many Tesla's out there doing this every day, and they're adding thousands more beta testers every single month, every single quarter, every single year. All right, it's just growing exponentially, which means even more data sending back, even more results coming back, which means Tesla gets a bigger and bigger lead. Now, I don't expect any of you guys to believe what I'm saying here. I don't, especially because I have a very inherent bias in the fact that I'm so invested in Tesla. Just look at my channel. I talk so much about Tesla. Why? Well, because I'm all invested into Tesla. So here's what I would pose to you. I have a few questions just to ask yourself. If what Tesla does with just, say, autopilot was so easy, why doesn't everybody else do it? If Tesla did not have the right approach with full self-driving for autonomous vehicles, why is it that Tesla has 60,000 beta testers and essentially hasn't had a single crash yet, where we see things like this from Waymo trying to keep things out of the media, trying to sue San Francisco to essentially keep secret or not disclose any accidents they've had? Why is it that companies like Waymo are experiencing 64 crashes a year when they're testing, yet we're not seeing the same with Tesla? Right? These are questions you have to start asking yourself. If Tesla has the wrong approach, then why is it that they have the most out there? Why is it that they have the least amount of issues? And why is it that nobody else has been able to replicate the success they're having? Where are they? We're all waiting. Don't believe me? Think about those questions. Let me know if you have any answers to them. You can leave me a comment down below. All right, that's gonna be it for today's video. I appreciate you stuck to the end. I hope this example of LiDAR versus vision help give you a better idea of why Tesla went with the vision approach and why nobody else will, why everybody else is stuck with LiDAR. And again, it really comes down to the fact that they have two different approaches, and really it's because nobody else can get the data, nobody else can take the approach Tesla has because they don't have the fleet. So with that said, we're gonna leave it there. Appreciate it. Thanks again for sticking to the end. I love you all. Peace.